threatened by what we see in the newspapers, by melting ice shelves and global warming? Where do you find the hope and inspiration, and what is it about it that just feels suddenly off? What are we supposed to be doing besides just coming to Earth Day? And I think the issue is that there's a huge disconnect between what we're told to do, to change our light bulbs, to maybe ride our bikes to work, which are all good things, but they're not enough. Because these problems are too big. And we know that in British Columbia. We have an incredibly green population and we know how to fix it. And the way to fix it is to organize. It's to gather together. It's to engage. Because we do need to change our lifestyles, but more than that, we need stronger laws. We need to start saying to each other, it's not just about light bulbs, it's about laws. We're doing pretty well in British Columbia. We're one of the only jurisdictions that now has a carbon tax. We're getting cap and trade legislation. We protected millions of acres of the Great Bear Rainforest. And those are all fabulous things, but none of them would have happened if you didn't join environmental groups like the ones that are here, the Western Canada Wilderness Committee, Sierra Club, ForestEthics, Greenpeace. You need to find the group that speaks to you and get involved. Even if it just means going to their website for 5 minutes and signing a list and sending a letter. If you can donate some money, donate some money. But more than that, we need to volunteer. Because it's not enough to sit back and let someone else decide the fate of our children's future. Because you wouldn't let someone else decide where your kids go to school. You wouldn't let someone else decide other major issues in your life, and you shouldn't let someone else decide your kids' future, what kind of air they're going to breathe and water they drink. You need to get involved yourself. Alright, so while I have you all here, we're going to talk a little bit about BC, because we can start right here at home. It's an amazing thing that in British Columbia we protected about 14% of our forests and land base. It's better than Canada. Canada's only protected about 8%. But if Brazil told us they were going to log 82% of the Amazon, would that be good enough? It's not good enough. The fact that over 70% of all the forests on Vancouver Island are already gone and we're still logging old growth is not good enough.
Not good enough.
The fact that Clackwood Sound today is still unprotected, that we don't have legislation to protect Clackwood Sound 15 years later is not good enough.
Not good enough.
So we have a lot of work to do at a BC level. We have to ensure that the rest of British Columbia's old growth is protected. We have to ensure that our government continues to increase our global warming legislation. We have to ensure that we don't have tankers on the coast of British Columbia. But we also need to act federally, because this is a national and an international issue. So this year, I went to Bali to the international climate change negotiations. And I stood there while the head of the United Nations said that unless we reduce our greenhouse gas emissions fast, that we face oblivion. You know, if I had used that kind of language when I started doing work on environmentalism in British Columbia, they would have called me a lunatic. All right, they did. But the point is, the head of the United Nations is saying this kind of thing right now, and then I stood there and heard the Minister of Environment, Baird, say that no, we're not going to pass strong legislation in Canada.
Not good enough.
That we're not going to reduce emissions. And in fact, Canada's emissions are continuing to rise. We are all doing good things. Canadians are committed to these issues. The polls show that Canadians care, that we all want to reduce emissions. But our carbon emissions, our greenhouse gases are going up.
Not good enough.
And they're going up because we live in a place where we have the largest fossil fuel development on Earth, the Alberta tar sands.
Not good enough.
And some people may think that this is an Alberta issue, but it's not. It's a national issue. And the tar sands alone have emissions greater than the annual emissions of 204 countries. It's a massive disaster, and as a result, we have acid rain again in Saskatchewan. We thought we'd fought acid rain, but now we have it again.
Not good enough.
So what do we do? And where's the good news in all of this? Well, the good news is I found out in LA this year when I had my little brush with Hollywood is that green is the new black. Everyone from Walmart to Harper to Paris Hilton is green. So what does that mean for us? It can make us really cynical, or we can see it as an opportunity. I spent 2 minutes this year with Paris Hilton and stood next to her and had a photo taken. And the result was that I did 57 interviews in 13 countries about the state of the world's forests. So we can get cynical about the fact that we are at a tipping point and everyone wants to be green, or we can organize, because this, Vancouver, is our moment to make change. And if you were ever going to get involved in environmental issues, this is the moment, because we have the attention of the world on these issues. All right, so let me close with one thought, one word. What do we do if it's not just about changing our own lifestyles, a 100-mile diet, and changing our light bulbs? What we do is engage. We engage in the upcoming municipal elections. There are people here with clipboards signing you up to Vision Vancouver. There's one. There he is. Go talk to him. Because regardless of who you're going to vote for in this mayoral election, if you don't sign up to Vision Vancouver by May 15th, you can't vote. You can't vote on June 15th for who leads Vision Vancouver. And it's an incredibly important race. It's a very contested race. And I, for one, am going to be there on June 15th cheering on Gregor Robertson, because I think he's one of the greenest and most honest politicians I've ever met in my life.
Agricultural land reserve.
So connect with the NGOs that are here, the environmental organizations. If you want to know more about Clackwood Sound or the Great Bear Rainforest or our new tar sands campaign, go onto the ForestEthics website or talk to me. And remember that these issues are in fact the challenges of our age. At one time they may have been issues for people who cared about trees, who had a soft spot for white bears. These are now moral issues. And when the United Nations tells us that by 2020, 50% of Africa will not have food, and 2 billion people in the world will face water shortages as a result of global warming, it tells us that these issues today are moral issues that we all need to take very seriously. They're economic issues. They're issues of our stability. These are, in fact, the challenges of our age. And we're responsible today not only for what we're doing, but for what we don't do. So make one new commitment. Make one new commitment before you leave today about how you're going to engage. Thank you, everyone, and